Black Adam stars Dwayne The Rock Johnson and was directed by John Collett Sarah. I hope I said your name right. And we get our Justice Society with Aldous Hodge as Hawkman, Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate, Noah Centineo as Adam Smasher, and Quintessa Swindle as Cyclone. Now, I'm a huge fan of DC movies, and I was very excited for this film. I always like to give them the benefit of the doubt over Marvel. They feel like the underdog to me, and I always enjoy their movies a little bit more for a variety of reasons. Not to mention that Batman's also my favorite superhero, and we just got a great Batman movie. And what DC really excels at is providing a little bit of a darker experience and not having such clear delineation between good and bad. And I went into this really hopeful because Black Adam, the very little that I know about that character, kind of walks that line, and this could have been done very, very well. But unfortunately, starting from the opening scene, I was met with disappointment after disappointment. The film opens with a big exposition scene that basically explains the whole backstory of what happened before this movie takes place and how Black Adam was created. Right off the bat, I was pretty jarred by this because I don't see why you wouldn't have that be the movie. This is an origin story for this character, and with any of these movies, there's a big responsibility to do a good job of introducing the character to us, giving us something to care about, and really helping us understand this character, and then you can start throwing him into other issues and other things going on in modern day. Films like Iron Man, Captain America, they both do this very, very well. Captain America, you see him develop from the time that he's a scrawny kid in World War II to becoming Captain America, and then you get this huge gap in time where he's frozen until you actually get the other movies. But you get a whole movie dedicated to that time before he became Captain America, before he was frozen. And I think that was really smart on their part. It helps you develop that understanding of what he went through before. With this film, right off the bat, they throw all that away. We don't get any of that. It's just told to us through an exposition scene. That's super disappointing right off the bat. After this long exposition scene, we get introduced to a bunch of new characters, and they don't really develop any characters in this film at all. And there's supposed to be some emotional moments, comedic moments. They all land flat because not only was it not funny, not only did they not give the dialogue any time to just kind of sit in your mind, but they just throw all this stuff at you and you don't have time to process anything. And that brings me to my biggest issue with this film is that it's so fast-paced. It's way too fast. It almost reminds me of a YouTube video or like some of my videos when I keep having to cut over and over and over again. And it hurt virtually every sequence in this movie. Not only action, but also the dialogue. The dialogue was so bizarre in this film. I can tell that the actors were doing a good job and actually giving good performances. And there were times when I wanted to kind of hear more of what they were trying to say without the camera jumping around and just cutting in between every other word. I'm not kidding. There were times when the camera would just cut so fast during a conversation that you could never really get a feel for like people's expressions or the things that the character's saying and the expression they're making. You could never really get a good grasp of what's going on. And because the dialogue was so fast paced, you also as a viewer don't get a chance to process what's even going on. It almost reminds me of a kid trying to tell you a story and they'll jump around super fast to a bunch of stuff and it feels like they're glossing over details but also telling it to you super fast as they can, and they're jumping around a little bit scatterbrained. That's exactly the way this film delivers dialogue, delivers action scenes, and tells you the story. It's so bizarre. And as I mentioned, the action scenes also suffer from this. There were tons of times where I wish they would have just slowed down and let us enjoy the scene, but it's like they're ready to get to the next thing right off the bat. I didn't even have time to digest what I just saw, and some of them were really badass, but you never got a chance to really enjoy it. And unfortunately, the CGI sucked as well. I hated the way this movie looked. It was like the movie was in the standard around 30 FPS that movies always are. But then the first time we see Black Adam and he's using his powers, he's in like 60 frames a second. So he's moving real fluid. It almost looks like a video game or something. I don't know how DC saw this and thought, yeah, this looks good. Let's actually put this in the movie. It's so bizarre. It's been a long time since I've seen CG this bad. There were also some effects, like flame effects and different things in the movie where at certain times it looked horrible. It actually reminded me of my old Windows XP PC game I used to play, Temple of Elemental Evil. There was literally a part of the film that looked exactly like those old Windows XP graphics. It was unbelievable how bad the CG was at certain times. And then we get our Justice Society, which they spent no time developing, and Pierce Brosnan is giving this great performance. You can tell he's putting it all out there, but the poor guy had no chance. I mean, they really didn't set up his character. They didn't set up for any of the emotional parts. There was just nothing there. They literally gave him nothing to work with, and he still shined, but you could tell it was kind of in a movie where there's nothing to shine with. And it's a little jarring too, because when the characters take off their helmets, the frame rate slows down because now all of a sudden it's actually them again. And it's so jarring. You can tell when it's CG, when it's not, because of that frame rate. It's so bad. And I don't know what was going on with this film. It's the most strangely edited film I think I've ever seen. At times I was counting 2 to 3 cuts per second. It was unbelievable. I felt like it was giving me anxiety. Like, just slow down for a second. Let me enjoy this. It was like they didn't want to show you one thing too long. I felt like a kid who has no attention span or something. Like they had to keep my interest, and they were so desperate at keeping it that they actually lost my interest. Honestly, I've never been more bored with such a fast-paced movie. I don't know how they managed to achieve that and managed to get around so many cool, badass moments that you could see glimpses of, but they never let them develop, never really presented them to you in a full way. I felt like I watched a fast compilation of the movie. I really am curious to see a slightly less edited version of this movie. It could actually be really, really good. And like I said before, I always look to DC to provide a little bit less black and white, hero versus villain. They always seem to do a pretty good job of that. So it becomes a frequent point of conversation and contention between characters, but there was something very on the nose about it this time. It's almost like they're so aware of it, and that's the whole point of this character in a lot of ways, that it made no sense. The whole issue between characters was so underdeveloped that they never gave you a reason to believe that these characters would actually be this way with each other. There was no development on either side. So it's like you're just watching two random people have an argument. I feel like I'm on the outside. I'm not with the movie. It's kind of this feeling that I'm watching someone's compilation of the film, and that really is deep-seated in every issue of the film. Like, you're on the outside looking in instead of feeling like you're a part of this movie. I know it could have been great, and I see glimpses of a great film inside of whatever we got here. And it makes me wonder if maybe it was heavily edited to get to PG-13. I saw a lot of articles talking about how it was originally R-rated and they had to pull it back to PG-13, and they cut a ton of the movie to do that. I don't know if that's the reason. I also wonder as well if the reshoots had anything to do with it. That can be a sign of issues for a film. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if one day we'll get the Snyder cut where we get a much better director's cut of the movie. That could be really interesting, and I'm very open to that because, like I said, as much as I had issues with the movie, I could tell that there's a really interesting movie buried underneath this. I really do feel bad for The Rock in a way because he gave a great performance. He took what he was given and took it to the maximum. He really works as this character. He's just in a movie that doesn't work though. And I'd love to see him continue to play the character because I think in a better movie, he would be amazing, and he should really get some praise for this because he was really believable as this character. It's just, again, not a movie that allowed him to really shine. And being that he does really well as this character, I'd love to see him star in a Black Adam film, which actually is his origin story, like the parts that were all exposition. I'd love to see a movie of that with him in it. There were a few times where we get cutbacks to this point in time where we got all that exposition, and there's just something more authentic about it. Just to try to keep it vague without spoiling anything, there were a few emotional moments that kind of reminded me of some other time period movies I've seen, like Gladiator. Anytime it started to remind me of those, it got much better. And if they could have just leaned on that, if we get another movie where they lean on that, it could be much, much better. Overall, as you can probably tell, I'm very disappointed by Black Adam. I know that it could have been a much better movie. I can see glimpses of that beneath what we got. But despite a convoluted and almost nonsensical story that's totally generic, mixed with terrible pacing, a total lack of development of characters, and horrible CG, The Rock still managed to shine as this character, and I hope to see him continue to play this character in other things. I'm excited for that. it's totally nothing to do with him, and it's pretty impressive that he shines as this character even with, again, all these issues. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'm also going to be reviewing every James Cameron film once a week leading up to the release of the new Avatar. I'm very excited to do that, so keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be including my dad again in one of them, and my fiance in another, because spoiler alert, Titanic's her favorite movie. So I'm very excited to do those leading up to the release of Avatar, which is probably my second most anticipated movie for the year. So very excited for that. So keep an eye out for those. Anyway, thanks for watching. See ya.